Okay, good morning. Welcome to our 9:30 yoga practice. I'm Joanna. I'll be guiding you for the next 45 minutes, and I am joining you live from my home in Coquitlam, Canada. Today's practice will be a yin class for the hips. So we are going to start with gathering some props onto our mat. So you'll see behind me, I have a bolster already set up with a block and a blanket. And then I would encourage you to grab another block. So 2 blocks, one bolster, one blanket, and an eye pillow would be great for this class. And some of you may also enjoy the use of a strap, especially if you have tighter hamstrings. So you can grab that too. Once you have all your props together, we will set up our first shape, and we're going to start in our first shape together today because, as we know with yin, we are holding shapes for time, and because we've only got a small amount of time together, I want to make sure that we get through a couple of poses. So this first pose is hero pose, and I'm going to show you this version, but then I'm also going to show you a couple versions you can do if you have knee or hip or back sensitivity. Okay, so this is the first version, Varasana. So I'm sitting on the blanket on my knees, and I'm widen my knees a little bit, hip distance apart, and I'm starting to nuzzle my pelvis into the gap between my two heels. So your heels are resting on the outer edges of your hips. And then behind here is the bolster. This is for our lower back, middle back, upper back to lie on, and the back of our head. So you'll see the block at the far end is so that the head is slightly elevated. This is really good if you get any dizziness, nausea, vertigo. It's nice to have the head a little higher than the heart. So this is the version I'm going to take you into, and then I'll modify from here. So for some, you'll stay sitting upright. This will be enough sensation. For others of you, you can place your hands on the mat, either side of your feet, and start to lower your pelvis onto the floor, and then your lower back, middle back, upper back, and back of the head onto the support of your bolster. Now, if you find this is creating too much compression in your lower back or too much compression in your knees, this might not be the version for you. So do listen to your body as you settle in and see if this is appropriate for you to stay in. If it is, great. You can rest your hands on your rib cage and just let your elbows rest on the floor. Or you can let your arms go wide in an open T shape, palms facing up, elbows soft. And then you can simply breathe and receive the spaciousness we're creating in the front of the hips, quadriceps, psoas, and front lines of the torso. So like I said, if that version is not for you, if you're finding it's just one leg or one knee that is causing you some discomfort, you could always do this simply with one leg extended and the other leg bent. And you can again stay upright or you can recline. If it's neither of those options that will work today, no problem. Just remove that prop setup that we have and come around onto your front body. And then you can just lower yourself all the way down onto your belly, stacking one hand on top of the other and resting your forehead to your hands. And then taking your left hand behind you on your left hamstring, bend your left knee and then just wrap your left hand around the top of the left foot. You're hugging your left heel towards your glute. And as you do this, you're pressing the front of your pelvis into your mat. And here we're going to breathe into, again, the quadricep, the hip flexor, the psoas. But this option doesn't put as much pressure on the joints. So here we are in our opening shape. Breathing into the front of the hips. In today's practice, we'll make sure we target the fronts and backs of the legs and the outer hips and thighs, and a little bit of work for the inner thighs as well. It'll be a nice rounded practice. Once you've found your chosen shape, I encourage you to close or soften your eyes and start to receive your breath. The hips and pelvis are an emotional centerpiece of the body, and very often we find that they are a tight space in the body. We are very good at pushing down our emotion, our memories, our trauma into this space. And so you might find in today's practice that you're not only releasing some physical sensations, but you might also find that there is a bubbling to the surface of heat or memory or emotion. And just know that that is totally normal. It's for you to decide whether you wish to stay in that moment and be in that process of release, or if today's not the right day for that. If that's the case, you can just back off a little more, take some deeper breaths, maybe come out of the pose to reset and join back in when you're ready. However, if it feels good for you to be in that process today, I encourage you to do so. You are in a safe and supportive space, and I'm here to hold the space for you. So I encourage you today to enjoy this process for whatever it is you need, whether it's for the slowness and the rest, whether it's for the physical and mental or emotional release. And take your time. If you're just focusing on one leg at the moment, I encourage you now to lower that leg and move to the other side. So right heel coming towards the right glute. If you are on your front body, working into this quadricep stretch. If you're in full hero pose and you've decided that that's enough for today, then feel free to come out just the way you went in. You can either rest your body in child's pose, folding forwards, or just sit in a simple seat of Sukasana to reset. And wherever you are, let us take 5 more breaths. And start to lower your right leg if it's lifted. If you are on your front body, place your hands either side of your rib cage and press up into tabletop. You might enjoy a moment or two in child's pose, so widening the knees, big toes together, melting pelvis back to heels, and lowering your chest and forehead towards the floor. Just a couple of breaths into your lower back. If you're in full hero pose, walking your hands back towards your feet and coming up to sit. And then removing any of the props behind you, coming around to a seated position, and either sitting in Sukasana, tall seat, or perhaps folding into child's pose as well. If you are choosing to fold forwards, do just give yourself a moment in an upright, neutral position before you do that. Wherever you are, breathe a little space into your lower belly. And then we'll make our way to a seated position if you're not there already. This is where some of you might want to grab your strap. We're going to extend the legs forwards and come into a seated forward fold or Paschimottanasana. So with both legs long, you want to check first that your legs are your hip distance apart and parallel. So don't have the legs too close together, as that's going to restrict the amount of movement in the hip flexors. So make sure that they're your hip distance. And then just notice what it feels like to sit upright. If the back feels pretty tall and long, then you won't need to place anything underneath your pelvis or perhaps under your legs. You might be good as you are here. However, if you find that your spine is quite rounded here, or the back of your pelvis is tilting backwards, then we're going to elevate the pelvis with a prop. So just find a block and sit on that. And then make sure you're sitting right on the very edge of the block, almost like you're going to fall off it. And that's going to help us tilt the pelvic bowl forwards and in the direction that we want to hinge into this flexion. Further to this, if the hamstrings are tight, slide your bolster or rolled up blanket underneath the knees. And that will allow for some natural softening to the backs of the legs and might help you with sitting upright with a bit more comfort. And then finally, if you are wishing to use the strap, take it around the soles of your 2 feet and then wrap the strap around your hands a couple of times. If you're not using the strap, place your hands on your thighs. Everybody take a big inhale, sit nice and tall. And as you exhale, draw your belly button towards your spine and lean forwards with your chest. So you're keeping your back nice and long. So we're trying not to round the spine or bring the forehead towards the knees. Instead, you're thinking about the chest plate leaning into your toes. So there is length from tailbone to crown of the head. And this will allow the stretch not only to be in the backs of your legs, but up the entire back lines of your body. So right from the back of the head, down the back of the neck, spine, legs, and you might even feel some sensation in the soles of your feet. Simply hinge forwards as much as is comfortable in your body. That might be a little, it might be a lot. Doesn't matter. What matters is that you are in a place of sensation. You can feel a gentle stretch, but not an overpowering one. And that you can stay in this shape for time. So this is a great place, or a great shape even, I find, to really practice the principles of yin, because we have to let the ego move to one side in this shape. A lot of us are familiar with this shape, and perhaps we put the expectation on ourselves that the goal is to get our forehead and our chest as close to our legs as we can. But nothing happens if you manage to do that. In fact, the goal of the shape is to be in a place of stretch. So if that means you're sitting more upright, that's fine. If that means you're hinging further forwards, that's fine too. As long as you're in a stretch. And a stretch can mean a different thing in a different body. So for us, we want the stretch to be an active stretch. We definitely want to feel it, but we don't want it to be overwhelming or overly intense. So if you are forcing your body too far, too quickly, your body is simply going to resist. It's going to contract, and you're not really going to reap any benefits of being here for time because your body can't soften and relax into the pose. Instead, you want to find that sweet spot of just enough effort and activity where you feel like you're putting a bit of extra stress and pressure on the body, but you're able to stay here for time and you're able to maintain a steady breath. That's the sweet spot. That's where we want to be. Because when we're communicating with the body through our breath that everything is okay, that we are steady, then the body will start to accept and soften and allow and perhaps even invite us a bit further into the pose. And that's why we stay here for time, so that we can give the body the experience of processing and digesting what we're asking it to do. And maybe, just maybe, creating little extra pockets of space along the way. So here you are, constantly monitoring how the shape is, how it's feeling, how you're doing, never being in a passive place, never overexerting yourself so far that you feel your body screaming to get out of the pose. But instead, just finding that happy place. My teacher calls it the Goldilocks position. Not too much, not too little, just right. I'm going to take 5 more breaths here. And then releasing the strap or your hands from your feet or legs, sliding the hands up the legs, rolling up through your back until your head is lifted. Bend into your knees, feet to the mat. Remove any props that might be under your legs or seat. And let us now move into either pigeon pose or deer pose. So again, this are options that will or will not work for everybody's knees and hips. So I'm going to give you lots of options. So the first one is deer pose, and from deer pose you can extend into pigeon pose. So I'll show you deer. You're going to lean into your right hip and hand and bring both of your legs around to the left. You've got your right leg in front of you bent and your left leg slightly behind you bent. The only thing you need to worry about with the left leg is if it's comfortable. So if you need to put a bit of extra blanket padding under the left knee, do so. The left foot is relaxed. You don't need to worry about that leg. The focus here is on the right leg. So make sure that your right foot is flexed And then decide whether the right heel is close to your midline or further away. Some of you will work towards a 90-degree angle with that front leg. Some of you will keep the right heel closer. Again, all depending on your hips and knees. I encourage you to bring either your blocks or your bolster in front of you. This is so that we can rest our forearms perhaps or our forehead onto them. Some of you will use these, some of you won't. And if you find that your right knee is really elevated off the floor, I would put a little extra cushion padding under that right knee. Check that your hips and chest are facing directly forwards and have your hands supporting you on the floor. So here we are, this is deer pose. Some of you will stay like this. There'll be enough sensation in your outer right hip and your front of your inner left leg. You can stay like this as long as you like. Others of you will hinge forwards at your hips and start to walk your hands forwards on the mat, or you might lower your forearms onto your blocks, or place your forearms onto the mat and lower your forehead onto your blocks. Some of you might not use props at all in front of you, and you might actually just bring your forehead closer to the mat. Wherever you are, you're breathing into that outer right hip especially. You're relaxing your shoulders. So that's deer pose. If you want to take that into pigeon pose, you'll simply extend your back leg behind you. So that's your left leg for this side, long and straight, making sure your left knee and the top of your left foot are resting on the floor. And again, your forehead, your chest can be as close to the floor in front of you as you wish, or you can remain a little higher upright. This will create a little gentle back bend and maybe a bit more space in the front lines of your torso. If neither of these options are for you, then you can always come onto your back and take thread the needle. For that shape, you'd lie on your back, have both feet on the mat, knees bent, and then start with the right side. So bring the right leg up, flex the right foot, externally rotate the right leg, so you're turning out the right toes, right knee, and then cross your right ankle onto your left thigh. You can have your right hand on your right inner thigh, widening the right knee away from you. You might put your left foot onto a prop so that your legs are slightly elevated, or you can bring both legs into your chest and hold the back of your left hamstring or around your left shin. And here you are in thread the needle, receiving the same stretch for your outer right hip and thigh, but perhaps with less pressure on your hips and knees. And if you are on your back here in thread the needle, you can always rock across your lower back if that feels good, offering an extra massaging quality to your hips and back. So those are all the options for the outer right hip and thigh. Deer, pigeon, or thread the needle. Pick the one that works best for you, leave the rest. And know that when we move on to the second side, you don't have to do what you've done here on the first side. You can always choose one of the other options. We know that the two sides of the body are not symmetrical, and very often the left side is a stickier side. So you might need to back off a little more on that side, go a little more gently, and that's fine. Be in a place of active stretch, but not in a place where it is completely overwhelming, and never in a place where you feel any pain. So no sharpness, no electric quality, no numbing, no tingling. Those are signals from the body that you need to back off. So please listen to those. If you're finding it challenging to be here or to be still, to calm the mind, then perhaps focus back on your breathing, and in particularly breathing into your lower belly. This has a profound effect on the nervous system. It is very grounding and calming. It's also a great way to massage your digestive system and to soothe any nervous energy that might be circulating in that space. And breathing into your lower belly doesn't mean you have to force the inhale and push the belly out as much as you can. It can be very subtle and soft. On your inhale, you're just feeling a gentle rise of your lower belly as it widens and expands, but just gently. And as you exhale, you're just noticing the lower belly softening and sinking, helping you to relax heavier into your mat, heavier into the pose. And see if you can bring all of your focus and attention to this. Simple breathing in, widening the lower belly. And breathing out, softening and relaxing the lower belly. Let us take 5 more breaths. If you're in thread the needle, simply unravel your legs, maybe hug the knees in and rock across your lower back. If you're in pigeon or deer pose, you can lean into your right hip and hand and bring your legs forwards. You might just enjoy extending your legs out and just rolling your ankles, wiggling your toes, shaking the legs, and exhaling your breath. Simply releasing that side and giving your body a chance to catch up. Now we'll move on to the second side. So if you are in deer or pigeon, you're leaning into your left hand and hip, bringing both legs around to the right, maybe padding under that right knee for deer pose. Checking in with the left leg, making sure that your left heel is in an appropriate distance from your midline. And then setting up your chest and hips facing forwards, maybe walking your chest forwards, forearms onto a prop or forehead down onto a prop. And remember, we're here for time, so if you want to fold into this depth as we stay here, then by all means do so. Don't feel like you have to go to the fullest expression of the pose straight away. If you would prefer pigeon pose here, you're extending your right leg back behind you and moving on to the top of the right knee and the top of the right foot. Maybe adjusting the position of that left heel in relationship to your midline, and either remaining upright or perhaps leaning forwards. And then final option is for those of you on your backs, if you're taking thread the needle on this side, 2 feet start on the mat, and then it's the left leg to the sky. Externally rotate the left leg at the left hip, cross left ankle onto your right thigh, and either remain like this may be enough, or elevate your right foot on a prop, or bring both legs into your chest and hold the back of your right hamstring or even around your right shin if that's accessible. Make sure your shoulders remain relaxed wherever you are, so you're not lifting shoulders to ears, you're not clenching in the back of your jaw or scrunching around your eyebrows or forehead. Sometimes we can simply shift the tension from one space in the body. So for today, we're working on the hips, and then we can just shift that tension to someplace else. So instead of doing that, let's see if we can release that tightness and tension away from the body by focusing back on those lower belly breaths and letting the rest of the body soften. Wherever you are, let us take 5 more breaths. If you are in deer or pigeon, you can start to walk your hands towards you, lifting your chest. And bring your legs forwards again, wiggling out your feet, ankles, rolling, maybe shaking the legs and releasing your breath. If you're in thread the needle, uncross your legs, hug the knees in, rock on your lower back a little. Maybe place your hands on your kneecaps and take your knees in some loose circles, moving away from one another and back towards one another. And if you are seated, you can slowly make your way onto your back and meet us there. Bringing your props with you in case you need them. We're coming into Recline Butterfly Pose or Supta Badakanasana. So here you'll bring the soles of your feet together, knees bent, and let the knees go nice and wide. You can either let the knees do this on their own, or if you need a bit of extra support for those knees or hips, place your blocks under the knees or under the hips. If your legs feel good in this position without props, you might choose to elevate your feet on a block, and that will allow your knees to go a little wider perhaps, or give at least the hips a bit more space to move into. So see how that goes. And then for your arms, option to rest your hands either on your inner thighs for extra weight and grounding, or hands to lower belly. This can be very nurturing. Elbows on the floor, arms relaxed. It can also help you to focus on that expansive inhale breath into the lower belly and relaxing exhale breath into the lower belly. The final options are to expand your arms wide, so palms facing up, elbows soft, arms in a gentle T-like shape, or arms in a diamond shape around your head, backs of the hands to the floor, maybe wrapping one hand around the opposite wrist just to hold the arms in place. This will offer a bigger stretch for your pectorals and chest plate and under your arms. So see how that goes for you. And here the focus is space and length and the inner leg lines, the adductor muscles. All of these postures we picked today are great for tight hips, especially if you sit a lot with your work, or if you drive a lot, or if you're finding that you're just carrying a lot with you at this time, a lot of tightness or stress or emotion. If you can offer yourself even half an hour to come through these shapes, you might notice some subtle or profound differences. And let's take 5 more breaths here. Place your hands to the outsides of your legs and carefully bring your knees back together, removing any props that are around your legs. And before we take our resting shape of Shavasana, let's come into a cooling supine twist. So just placing your feet on the mat, lift your hips up and over to the left side of the mat and lower your knees to the right. You could put a prop under your knees or between your knees or both for extra support. And either rest your hands on your body, or again, arms can be wide in a gentle T shape, maybe with an extra prop supporting the back of that left shoulder if needed. You can look to the sky or look over your left shoulder if that's comfortable for your neck. Just take a couple of gentle breaths here, winding down. And then engage your core just enough so that you can bring your knees back to center. And we'll simply swap and go to the other side. So hips to the right, knees lowering to the left. And again, you might take some or all of your props with you for between the legs or under the legs or behind your right shoulder. Resting hands to the body can be really grounding and anchoring. Or arms expanding wider can deepen the twist and create more depth to our breath. And then slowly engaging the core, bring those legs back to center. And here we'll prepare our body for Shavasana. So you might like a prop under your legs. You might like a prop behind your head. You may enjoy a blanket over your entire body, or simply resting the weight of a blanket onto the front of the pelvis can be really grounding. Check that your legs are gently wide with your feet turning out. This will ensure that the hips are relaxing and you're not holding any tension there. And then also check that your arms are slightly wider than your body, palms facing up, shoulders nuzzling underneath you a little. Back of the head is heavy, neck is long. And here you're sweetly breathing into your lower belly. Allowing your body to soak up the practice. And taking a moment in deep gratitude for carving out this time for yourself today. Give yourself the peace and quiet of Shavasana, and I will call you when it's time. Until then, no more to do. If you have longer to dedicate to your Shavasana today, then please stay as long as you need. If, however, it's time for you to come out, you can start to deepen your breath. Start to wiggle your fingers and toes. Move your wrists and ankles. And take a full body stretch as you inhale. As you exhale, hug your knees to your chest and rock gently on your back. And slowly roll onto your side. And come all the way up to a tall seat of Sukasana. Noticing how it feels to sit now, having shown your hips a little attention and love. Maybe place one hand on the heart, one hand on the lower belly. Simply receiving your breath as you are. Recognizing the importance of slowing down, the art of yin, its ability to help us dissolve tightness and tension, create newfound space and length, and to be in a place of processing. Recognize the benefits you've gathered from this practice and what you'll be taking with you off your mat. It's my pleasure to guide you. One sealing breath in through the nose and out through the mouth. Namaste.